Be an interesting exercise. So here we go. Draft history. So 2015 was Amari Cooper. A lot of people might roll their eyes. He was a bad mofo at Alabama. He was that dude at Alabama. So we were talking about Amari Cooper as the top receiver. Kevin White was a bust, but it was pretty much Amari Cooper. That was the guy that you wondered. 2016, not great either. And this is kind of what this draft feels like. This draft kind of feels a lot like 2016, where we're talking about Corey Coleman, Will Fuller, Josh Doxson, Laquan Treadwell, Sterling Shepard, and then Michael Thomas ends up being the best wide receiver in the draft. This feels a lot like 2016. 2017, not great either. 2017, not great. 2018, you had the Ridley, DJ Moore, Sutton. That was in the 20 range. Ended up being all right. But recently, and we'll just go up to 2020, 2021, it feels like the quality of wide receiver, like from the COVID draft to now, it just always seems like there's a bunch of mofos. Now you sprinkle in some busts here or there, but just look at 2020. You have Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Reagor, Justin Jefferson, Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman. All those guys went in the first 34 picks. First 34 picks, you had Henry Ruggs, Jeudy, Lamb, Reagor, Justin Jefferson, Ayuk, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman. 2021, this was crazy too. This was in the top 10. You had Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith. 2022, Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jamison Williams. And then we go down 2023, JSN. Then you had Quentin Johnston, Addison, Zay Flowers. And then last year you had the Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Adunze, Xavier Worthy, Pearsall, Leggett. Like in 2020, like if you go to 2020 to now, like if you're drafting at 25, and this might end up looking like something, but if you're drafting at 25, right there at 25 in 2020, you're getting Brandon Ayuk. You can get Brandon Ayuk. So Ayuk right there at 25 in 2020. No questions asked. Right after Justin Jefferson, Lamb, Jeudy, Ruggs. And then right after Ayuk, if you didn't take Ayuk, let's say your board was different, you end up with T. Higgins or Michael Pittman. So you feel good about that. 2021, if you're drafting at 25, you could get Rashawn Bateman, you could get Elijah Moore. Not awesome. But if you're at the top, we're talking Chase, Waddle, Devontae Smith. 2022, if you're drafting at 25, kind of no man's land. You're going to end up with Pickens. Texans ended up with Mechie. But before that, you had Jamison, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, London. You had some mofos at the top. And then 2023, not great at 25, but look at the very top. And then last year, we already talked about the Marvin Harrison, Neighbors, Brian Thomas at 23. If you're at 25, you could have had Worthy, Pearsall, Leggett, Keon Coleman, or Ladd McConkey. So this time, last year, if let's say the Texans had 25 and it was last year's receiving core, this would be your options here. You could go with Xavier Worthy, Pearsall, Leggett, Keon Coleman, Ladd McConkey, Adonai Mitchell. Jalen McMillan was good with Tampa Bay. He came on late. A lot of guys. So I say all that to say I like Golden, but when you look at the guys at the very top, and we're talking about who the wide receiver ones were since 2020, I just don't put Golden in that category. Like he should be a guy that's there at 25 no matter what. And it almost feels like it's such a weak wide receiver draft that we're kind of stuck there. Wags asked thoughts on Smith's comments on McMillan. He didn't really say anything that bad. He basically just said that he doesn't think he's as aggressive and he doesn't think that he's like he's mossing folks in tape. It almost felt like a fair evaluation based on him not reaching his full potential. The comments went viral. And when you first read the headline of what Steve Smith said about McMillan, and Stoots thinks McMillan's the best player in this draft. So Stutes is obsessed with him. All right, we hit that McNeese state. Bada bing, bada boom. We needed that. But Stutes likes him, but all that he said was Steve Smith was that he on tape he doesn't maximize his size. Steve Smith was basically saying you might have the dog in you, but when I turn on the tape, I don't see the dog. He didn't dismiss it. He's still his number 2 receiver. Like if you look at Steve Smith's receiver rankings, he's still his number 2 receiver. So I wouldn't put too much stock in what Steve Smith said. I didn't look at it as that bad of a thing that Steve Smith said with McMillan. I do think McMillan might fall. I could see him falling like in the 15-20 range. Someone's falling. The 3 names that are being mentioned, like, could you see this guy falling are Genty, McMillan, and Colston Loveland. It feels like it's automatic assumption that Jim Harbaugh doesn't let Loveland get past him after seeing what Bowers did and with their history. I think that's a fair assumption to make, but it wouldn't be the craziest thing to see Genty fall to like 15-20. Do you trade up for Genty? If you have Mixon and Genty, what do you think? What if the Texans trade, I don't know, 2 of the picks that they got in the Tunsil trade and they trade up for Genty? What are you saying? What if Hampton's there? What if they like Hampton? What if the Texans decide, hey, we want to be the Lions? Because the Lions, the most pivotal draft that the Lions had, when they were kind of when they were not necessarily 100% proportional with what the Texans are, but the Lions, they drafted Gibbs when people thought it was too early. And people were wondering, what the hell are you going to do with this guy? If they hadn't done it, they aren't as good as they've been the last couple of years. And then they ended up getting Laporta in the 2nd round. So naturally, when you're getting weapons, you kind of think receiver. They'd already drafted Jamison Williams. They got lucky and got Amon-Ra St. Brown. And they drafted their Gibbs. What if the Texans love Travion Henderson? What if they think Travion Henderson is Gibbs? Would you be against them taking him in the 1st round? Would that be too much of a reach? But what if they're going to use him out of the backfield? We saw him against Texas in the college football playoff, where Texas had tied the game. Ohio State looks like they're kind of tapping out, heading into the half, going to get some Gatorade. They dump it down to Diggs. Not Diggs. I keep saying Diggs. Gibbs / Henderson. Henderson takes it to the house. It's not the best skill position draft to really be in desperate need of skill position. And that's why it's always dangerous. And I think we're kind of seeing this play out. And I think it's a lot easier to see with offensive skill guys because we pay more attention to them. But a lot of times when we talk about the draft, we say, well, they need an offensive lineman, so you better draft an offensive lineman. But because college football, it's easier to follow the skill guys, you don't just say, well, they got to take a receiver. Because you know most of these guys. You know most of these running backs. But on the offensive line, it's, they should take an offensive lineman. They got to get a corner. It's tough. I wouldn't be mad if they drafted Travion Henderson. It's not like he's going to sit on the bench with Mixon. If they can get a running back that can add an element of being able to catch the ball out of the backfield, and I also think utilizing what Mixon does, maybe that's kind of a nice change of path, change of pace from what Mixon does, and it's a nice way to kind of still make the offense better. The other thing is this: we don't know how much longer Joe Mixon has. You don't want to head into the season like in desperate need of a running back. So if you think one of these guys after Genty, and the Genty fall is something to keep an eye on, I don't see it happening, but a lot of times running backs do fall. I don't know if this is the year that they're fall based on what we saw in kind of the revival of the position, but if he does fall, or if a running back is there, can also be your long-term plan. I think you should churn running backs every year. DeMeco Ryans used to believe that. He said that when he first got here. I don't see that. I haven't seen any churning of the running back position by this front office. That's one of the most frustrating things to me. You have two guys who used to have arrays of backs with where they started their careers.